Let's bring in CTV News U.S. political analyst Eric Ham to talk more about this. Eric, thanks as always for joining us.
You bet. It's good to be with you.
This is not the first time that Trump and Putin have spoken, but they're actually getting together. What does that mean?
Well, what we're seeing here is Donald Trump is really anxious to get a deal. And now he's even willing to meet with Vladimir Putin. And symbolically, already it's a win for Vladimir Putin, considering that the meeting is going to take place in Alaska, a territory that at one time belonged to Russia. And of course, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky will not be at the table. We know that Vladimir Putin has refused to meet with Zelensky, and now that he's got a meeting with Donald Trump, clearly, symbolically, this means so much for Russia, very little for Ukraine.
And if you think that Trump does want a deal, does this mean that Ukraine may pay the price for it?
Absolutely, it will. In fact, already President Trump is talking about land swaps where Ukraine may actually have to give up some land. And we've already heard from Volodymyr Zelensky saying that they will reject giving up any land to Russia. And right now we're seeing this meeting in the UK right now with British, EU, and Ukrainian and U.S. officials to try to move this process forward. And so clearly what we're seeing now, there's a lot of movement afoot. And I think much of this will actually depend on what Volodymyr Zelensky will actually be willing to agree to.
And where would we be if Putin says, yes, okay, we'll reach some kind of a deal, and Zelensky is the ones holding out? Could we see the war extended, or would Americans, what kind of pressure could they put on Zelensky?
Well, I think what we'll see is the United States will likely stop selling all weapons to the EU that they've been providing to Ukraine most recently. In addition to that, certainly Donald Trump will place enormous pressure on Zelensky to actually make this deal. Unfortunately, Zelensky actually is not in the best position. We know that Russia's armies have already begun to overwhelm and are slowly taking more and more territory. And so it is incumbent upon Zelensky to try to cut the best deal possible. The problem is right now he just doesn't appear, based on what we're seeing in these talks, to have the United States actually on his side, and he needs that.
And you mentioned the meetings that are happening in Europe. What kind of a role would Europe play in all this?
Well, I think right now what we're seeing is President Trump, now that this meeting is scheduled for next week, they're actually floating some of these proposals with EU allies to see if they will actually agree to land swaps and things like that. But again, what we're seeing here is at least Volodymyr Zelensky is signaling that there will be no land deals. And so I think what we're seeing is back and forth and discussions taking place between all the interested parties to at least see if they can actually get together on the same page.
Okay. Eric, thanks as always for joining us.
Thank you.